Hey YouTube fans, Eric Hayden here in the garden today. Last couple of videos we've talked about some winter maintenance, and it's really not to suggest that you should be out in your garden doing things in the garden just to do them. However, it is a pretty good time to get some stuff done, and this is what I mean. In the middle of the winter, you're not watering, you're not spraying, you're not mulching, you shouldn't be pulling weeds, again, unless you're trying to stay on top of it. So it's a pretty good time to try to get things done when you don't have the day in and day out maintenance. So the video today, I'm going to talk about one chore in the garden that I've wanted to get done for a while. Soaker hoses, my drip hoses. I did a video on drip irrigation. That link is in the description below. Pretty neat video at the start of our garden laying that out. The only thing is, especially for one part of my garden where I have some railroad ties behind me, the drip irrigation line goes right over it, and it's a tripping hazard, especially when I'm mowing. So check out behind me here in a second. I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. That's a good example of something that you can get done during the winter. Again, you're not doing watering, weeding, spraying, so it's a pretty good time. What do you have in your garden that you really wanted to get to over the summer that you didn't get to? We have January, February, March here where things aren't growing all that much, so it's a pretty good idea to do maintenance. So let's get on it. So this is what I'm talking about. Again, if you click in the description below, you can see a pretty nice video on drip irrigation. I've got these drippers all throughout the garden, and they do a pretty good job. It had been many years that I've grown roses that I have not used drip irrigation. Big reason for that, I just wasn't convinced that if you had a big garden like this, that the pressure and water amount would be the same, you know, where the pump is over there into garden 1, garden 2, and then by the time you get down to garden 6 or 7 at the end of the line, would it be putting out the same amount of water? So I just wasn't sure it would be consistent enough. But these drip emitters that I got said that they were pressure equalizing, and I tested it. I put a Cool Whip tub underneath one at varying parts of the garden, so kind of toward the end of the line and then near the beginning. And it was the same, so I was very impressed at that. So I went ahead and did it for the whole garden. And for the most part, these lines are underneath the mulch, and the only exposed part is the end if I need to flush it out, if there's any debris in them or anything like that. So these are end caps. But they go underneath the garden, and for the most part, you can't see them. A couple of exceptions. This bed here had railroad ties before we moved in. So the prior owners had a garden here, and you can see that, you know, it goes under this grass here, but then it goes up under the railroad, on top of the railroad tie, and that can be quite the tripping hazard for my kids running through the garden. It's kind of a pain in the butt when I'm mowing. You can see on this end, again, it goes on top of the railroad tie, on top of the grass into the garden. This part here, burying it pretty easy into the sod itself underneath it, but I've got to lower it, and that's going to be the task today. Throughout the rest of the garden, you can't really see it. I may dig a little trench, but the grass is kind of grown over it. So between these two gardens, maybe just tighten that up a little bit. And then same thing over here. The drip irrigation goes all the way over to the climbing roses. You see a teensy bit of it there, but you can see that I did do a trench and the grass has grown over that. I need to do a little bit better job there. We'll get to that, if not today, maybe another day, because that's pretty low-hanging fruit. The job today is to take a saw and cut the width of this drip irrigation tube. It's not very wide, and my thought is, with the wood gone, I can feed that down lower, so then it's flush with this grass. Then I can dig a trench, and it won't be a tripping hazard. Perfect day. It's, you know, January, 50 degrees, not raining, nothing's going on with the roses. They are dormant. So these are the types of things I'm talking about. If you've got little things, and again, we've been here coming up on 4 years for some of these beds. I'm trying to think, this will be our fourth, coming into our 4th year here. So these roses have been here 4 years, and the drip irrigation is probably 3 years old. I'll have to look back, and I'm finally getting to this part. So this is what I'm talking about. Let's get at it. All right, we are all done. It didn't work out exactly as I had hoped, but it's an improvement, so I'll leave it at that. So you can see that the black drip irrigation is now safely under the sod. Still not entirely happy with this. I cut a notch in, as you saw from the video. I wasn't able to get all the way to the ground, but regardless, because the system has already been laid out and it's probably, you know, perfectly fitted. I don't have a lot of wiggle room, so it's covered up here, but right here toward the end, I used some stakes, and that certainly helped. I might get a couple more to hold it in place. So since that took a little bit of elbow grease and it didn't work out exactly as I hoped, again, it's an improvement. It's not a tripping hazard anymore. On this other side of the bed, I think I am not going to try to cut that notch out, and this sod is really thick over here, so it's really only the last foot. So I'm going to dig a little trench here and then go to the hardware store and buy maybe a 12 or 6 pack of garden stakes, because I can use some other ones, get this stake down properly, and then add a couple more over here. So it worked through a bunch of different tools. But again, the whole point of this video wasn't perfection. The point was, what do you have in your garden that you have been wanting to do for 1, 2, 3, 10 years? Wintertime is a time to do it. I lived in upstate New York before, so I know you northerners might be saying, what if snow's on the ground? What if it's too cold? Obviously that won't apply to you. But even up north, you know, you get some days in the 40s and 50s, and if you don't have snow cover, you can get out there and do a little bit here and there. So this is just a video to show you, you know, if you've got some maintenance things that are piling up, wintertime's not a bad time to tackle them. So that's it here from the garden. Since it's wintertime, we won't be doing as many videos. You've probably noticed this, certainly slowing down. But once we get into later February, and especially March, the roses will start growing. We'll start talking about pruning, fertilization, and the whole 9 yards. Incidentally, we've been doing these videos for a while now, so scroll through my channel. You'll see some videos from the past if you want to see more about the growing season itself. The next video I do, more than likely, is going to be about what are all these pieces of metal in my garden and what's another chore I can be doing. I'll give a big hint. It has to do with staking. Now's a pretty good time to tackle staking. Anything that's fallen over. The roses are shorter. They're not as full of leaves, easier to get to. So I need to redo a lot of my stakes. And again, you want to do that before the roses are really big, grown out. So wintertime is a pretty good time to do that. As always, I appreciate the comments and new subscribers. And again, I encourage you, look back at some of the older videos. We have quite a few during the active part of the growing season that you may be more interested in these dull winter months. Have a great one, everyone.